Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good morning. How are you doing? Hope you're all well. Welcome back to our webinar series. Good morning. We hope you're all doing good. Thank you for your time and joining us for this webinar for Super Goal 246 Spoken and Written Language Topics, Components, Practices, and Learning Outcomes. We hope you're all doing well. This, just for a small recap, this is a webinar designed for intermediate teachers. And this is our second session. We had the first session yesterday. We have one more session that's tomorrow. And so there are 3 sessions for intermediate teachers. And we only have 1 session per day. So you don't have an afternoon session, you just have 1 session, which will last for 2 hours. So this session is going to end at 12 p.m. today. We will be talking about second semester course books, Super Goal 2, Super Goal 4, and Super Goal 6. And I guess just a quick sound check to see you can hear my voice. Please raise your hand so I can see that. Excellent. Hands going up so you can hear me. It's clear. What about tomorrow's session? Tomorrow's session is the same time. Then tomorrow is going to be the last session. Your moderators for today, myself, Sarish, along with my colleagues Minerva, Hamad, Medini, and Nasir. We are in the background to help you with any questions you have, or if you face any difficulty during the webinar, please let us know. Danai is your trainer who needs no introduction. She has delivered several training workshops for supervisors and teachers in the past. She's also co-authored the Saudi editions. Now, Danai usually refers to handouts during the session, and I know some of you have started asking for these already. So let me just drop the link to the handout. There are 4 handouts in this. She might refer to them, she might not, but it's good for you to have them downloaded with you. So this is the link to the handout that I've just dropped in the chat box. So feel free to download it. You can share this as well with your colleagues. Great. Just before we move on, I just want to make sure we cover any housekeeping slides for Zoom. So you're in the Zoom meeting, and if you're facing any connectivity issues with the audio, we recommend you use the call-in function with your phone. Although I think you're fairly okay with hearing me, but just in case, you can use the calling function as well. And also we recommend you close down any high networking apps such as Netflix, YouTube, gaming platform, because this is going to affect the bandwidth of your webinar. We will be taking Q&A we will be taking Q&A after this webinar. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box, in the Q&A, and we will pick it up after the session. You will also read a recording of this webinar. So we will send the recording of this webinar via email to you. So you will have the recording for this webinar. As for the certificates, please be patient about this. We will send you the certificates once the whole webinar series is over. Can I send the handouts for the first session that was yesterday? Can one of the moderators please drop that in the chat box? Also, the other thing is, I just want to make sure that you are comfortable, because you might only see yourself there. You can only see yourself there, but please don't worry about this. There are about 588 people who are attending with you. The second thing I want to mention is you don't need to mark your attendance anywhere. You are already being marked for this webinar automatically. Once you log in, we know what time you logged in, we know what time you log off. So don't worry about marking your attendance. That is not required. You have been pre-registered for this webinar, which means we already have all your names. So your names have been provided to us by the ministry, by your administrators. So please don't worry about correcting your names. I don't know how it's appearing for you on your screen. Some people have said it's appearing in Arabic. Do I need to change it? You don't need to change anything. Just leave it as it is. If you make changes, maybe it's going to change on our end. Just leave your name as it is. We can see it as you've submitted to the ministry. I hope that's clear. And regarding the chat box, the good news is you can actually interact with your peers. You can talk to each other. You can see comments. But for you to do that, you will have to write all panelists and attendees in the chat box. So if you can just scroll down and then select all panelists and attendees in the chat box, and then your other colleagues and everyone else can see it. Like Nasir, right now you've selected all panelists. If you select the two drop down and select all panelists and attendees, then your chat is going to be viewable to your colleagues and your peers, so you will be able to interact with each other, is what I'm trying to say. And then obviously you have got the chat box. You can comment on any message you have for Danai. You can join the discussion, share your thoughts. And then the Q&A is for sort of the moderators. So if you have any question, please let us know in the Q&A box, any technical difficulty, you can't hear us, or if you need any kind of support, we're here in the background to help you out. I think that's all from my side for now. I'm going to hand over to Danai. Unless there's anything for me, I'm there in the background to help you. So please troubleshoot any issues that you have. I see lots of OKs, which means you're all clear. Thank you so much for all the feedback. Enjoy your session. Over to you, Danai.
Thank you, Suresh. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Okay. Right. Okay. We are going to be talking about spoken and written language. I know we did some work on that in the first semester. So we're going to pick on some of the points that were made in the first semester, but basically we're going to move on to different types of activities management that you can deal with. Okay, the first thing I'd like you to do, please, is have a look at the first slide. What causes comprehension problems that language learners experience and native speakers don't is, what do you think? What do you think causes comprehension problems that language learners experience and native speakers don't? Vocabulary transliteration, cultural differences, pronunciation, long paragraphs and long new words, lack of vocabulary. Words, vocabulary. So basically language, is that what you're saying? Negative transfer, new words. So you're focusing on language, yeah? The effect of first language, negative transfer. Okay, different features of speech, the level. Okay, they think in English, okay. So mostly language is what you're saying, weak background, lack of connectors. So you're thinking of language, right? Does this apply to listening or reading? Reading, both. Okay. Differences in culture, good, both. Okay. All right. Do native speakers understand everything they read? No, thank you. No, not really. Is it the language that prevents them from understanding? Depends. Okay, so what might be causing the difficulty? Think of yourselves, if you're reading Arabic, if Arabic is your mother tongue, what might be causing problems? What type of text would you find more demanding? You don't understand everything you read in Arabic. Okay. What sort of text would you have trouble? Technical, for example, text. Okay. So you're still going on about vocabulary. Okay. Literature. All right. So basically, what seems to be causing problems is it language per se? Difficulty. Okay, you said you mentioned that you might academic context. Okay, uh, you mentioned that you don't understand everything you read in Arabic. Why? What might be the reason? Old Arabic way of thinking. All right. So the point of view, mindset. Okay. Education. So background, knowledge. Yeah. The way you think. Formal and informal. So the style. Using difficult structure. When you say difficult structure, are you referring to the structure of the text? In other words, the jar? Yes, of course, because you have different varieties, gap between everyday language and formal language, Arabic. Okay. It depends on one's knowledge. And when we say knowledge, what do we mean exactly? Do we only refer to language? Ambiguity. Information. Good. Okay. So difficulties in understanding. Okay. Difficulties in understanding are not necessarily due to language only. Is that what we're saying here? Culture. Yes, sure. Okay. So there are different reasons for it. And background, familiarity with the style of text, all sorts of things. And it's good to remember, and maybe you should let your students know as well, that it's the difficulty is not just because of the language, and remind them that native speakers have problems understanding texts that they read or listen to. Uh-huh. Okay, so sometimes with translation, the meaning is lost. This is confidence. Okay, multiple intelligences. Yes, okay. Um, you also use dictionaries for Arabic to Arabic. Okay, yes, of course. And dictionaries are always a good idea. Um, okay, fine, good culture shock. Okay. All right. Now, these are issues, some of them we've discussed, some we haven't. Shame between students. You mean the students get embarrassed because they feel the peer pressure. They don't want to make fools of themselves among their classmates, their friends. Okay. Individual differences. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. So let's have a look at these issues and talk about possible causes or ways of dealing with them. When students read or listen, they focus on words, not meaning. Do you agree or disagree? Disagree, good. Some people agree. Sometimes. Okay. How can you deal with that? How can you make sure that they're not focusing on words, but trying to focus on meaning? I'm talking about learners. Yes, I'm talking about students. Practice, yes. Give the main idea. Then you're helping them understand. Asking questions. Okay, fine. Good. Do you ask the questions after they read or before they read? After, before, after, before. Okay. We're going to come back to that issue in a bit about whether before and after, yes. Pre-reading before both, before and after. Okay. Why do we use questions? Why would you ask them to look at the questions before they read something? Just to warm up? To guess, okay, to predict, yes, to anticipate, to prepare them to understand, but also to set some specific purpose for reading. This is why, yes, exactly, a specific purpose. To get them to focus on some of points so that they don't start analyzing the text and looking at every word. So we're setting a purpose through the questions or whatever task we set for reading or listening. Okay, how about this? Meaning is the sum total of the words in the spoken or written text. Uh-huh. Okay. But do you think that meaning is the sum total of the words in the spoken or written text? No, not really. So what is? Definitely no. Okay. All right. If all is reliant on words, we might use the same word, but do we all mean the same thing? That's one issue. The other issue is some things are stated in an explicit manner, directly, and some things are stated indirectly, yeah, implicitly. So people have to infer. Yes, words have many meanings. Okay, um, learners don't make use of what they know about the topic of the spoken or the written text. Do you agree or disagree? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, do you want them to make use of what they know about the topic? Yes, definitely yes. And what do you try to do? Okay, make connections, guide them. All right. So, okay, when do you guide them? Okay, remind them, okay, of what they know, elicit their ideas about the topic and so on, raise expectations. Yes, before, well done. Okay, show them maybe relevant videos, as you say. Yes, good idea. Okay, to build upon what they already know. Now, just a reminder again, where we're at the moment in education and in learning in general is not where we used to be traditionally, which was that knowledge is transferable. Um, we look at knowledge as something that can evolve, can develop. If you give them the whole story in brief before they read, then do they have do they have a reason to read in order to understand? Okay, get them involved. Yes, that is the most important thing, isn't it? Um, Awareness of context is not considered important when listening or reading. Agree or disagree? Yes, correct. There you want to activate their schemata. Agree? Is not considered important? Disagree. Context is everything. It's very, very important. Well, sometimes you set the context, sometimes the context is set through visuals, sometimes the context is given by the text itself. So there are different ways of doing that. But what we need to do is to help learners notice, think, and identify things. Excuse me. Learners are often challenged when having to decide on the main idea. This is a personal issue that I have. Yes. It always confused me. Okay. Yes, it confuses them. Why do you think they get confused? When you ask them to identify the main idea. Okay, it does depend on the students themselves. Yes, correct. But how? Multiple ideas. Absolutely. Yes, sometimes there are so many ideas. And because each one of us is an individual with different backgrounds, different um, interests, and so on, we see things differently. Too much words analysis. You mean they analyze words? Instead of focusing on meaning. Encourage them. Okay, individual differences. Fair enough. Okay. They cannot distinguish between different viewpoints. The text may not be clear. They think it's difficult, yeah? Because they don't want to think. So what do you have to do? You have to help make them think. Okay, can we just very quickly talk about skimming and scanning now, and we can go back to it when we look at something more practical. Make them think. Yes. Okay. When do we scan in real life? When do we scan? Why do you scan a newspaper? When you're looking for something. So you've got a very specific thing in mind, or you're scanning in order to find out what sort of topics, information are important things. Yeah, okay, to find out what is important. All right, unless you're looking for something very specific. Okay, that's when you scan. When do you skim? For gist. You see, nobody can agree on this. Some people say general ideas, some people say details. Okay, so this is not always clear. Okay, when you skim a text, okay, if you're skimming for gist, which is usually what people think, you know, of when they're supposed to skim. Do you skim when reading for specific information? Do you scan when reading for specific information? Can we just clarify that? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So when you're looking for specific information, you usually read more carefully, more intensively, but you read for information. If you scan, you go over a greater amount of text in order to spot certain things for different reasons. Okay. Um, you know what skimming is? Yeah. Think of milk. When milk is skimmed, yeah. Scan for general main ideas. Skim when looking for specific information. We're getting. Okay. What I'm trying to say is I'll try and give you something tomorrow to try and clarify that. No fat when you're skimming milk. That's right. Okay. You look for the most important information, yeah? That's what you do to be creamy for conclusion. Okay. All right. So it's not always clear. Skimming and scanning refers to the way we read. The way we read is totally dependent on who we are, what we know, what we're looking for, okay, how familiar a subject is, and so on and so forth. You skim, you go through things to try and get essential information. Yes. Okay. Now, learners don't always separate their own opinions from the information in the text. Yeah. Do they separate their own opinions from the information in the text? Not always. So they often have problems. May I suggest that you don't worry about whether you're going to be using scanning or skimming, and just use words like reading for information, reading for details, um, looking for specific information. Okay, that's going to be a lot safer. And then we can discuss the skimming, scanning issue tomorrow again, if you're interested. Okay, they find it difficult to combine information from different parts of what they listen to or read. You agree about skimming and scanning strategy or this? Can we stop talking about skimming and scanning so we can do something very practical and specifically that tomorrow? Okay, they find it difficult, learners find it difficult to combine information from different parts of a text they read or something they listen to. Okay. All right. So how can we help them make connections then? What is important? Yes, it does depend on the difficulty of the text. Notes most of the time. Okay. Set a task, questions or a table for them to make notes or a certain task. Okay. So that they have to look for things. One of the things to remember is when people read in order to find specific information, to answer questions and so on, they should be free to go back and forth, yes? And you should really stress this for the students, that they shouldn't expect to find everything in order in a linear sort of manner, that they will probably have to go back and forth, okay? Whereas, for example, if they're listening to something, unless the speaker or the speakers decide to retract and go back to something they've already discussed, they can't control it. list the information in the text. Yes, fine. Note take, okay? Write, yes, try to write. Note taking is important. Highlighting is important, okay? And when they highlight, teach them to highlight specific words, content words that carry information, not everything. They're not confident enough to infer information. So if something is not directly stated, they don't feel confident enough to try and understand what the message is. Yes, notes are important in listening and reading. True. Yes. Okay. So what can you do to help them infer? Is it, again, it might be something very simple. Yeah. Something like somebody saying to somebody, you're joking. If I'm talking to somebody, if I'm talking to Suresh and Suresh says something to me, and I say to her in exactly the tone that you're going to hear, really, you're joking. What do you infer from this? What is the meaning I'm trying to convey? Surprise? But if I say, you're joking, not believing, well done. Okay. It's not that I don't believe her. Yes, I'm astonished. No, 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 I'm not calling her a liar. What I'm saying is this is unbelievable. That I can't believe what she's saying, not because I don't believe her. Okay, so I didn't use any difficult words, did I? Sometimes when you have minimal text, very few words, not sometimes, usually, very few words, that's when, yes, implication. It is heavy in terms of implicature. Okay. Um, think about advertising, advertisements, for example. Think of all sorts of things like that. Okay. Labels, uh, things that we remember. Okay. Um, students prefer to read rather than listen. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Some. Okay. All right. This will depend on their own strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. Remember, individual differences, multiple intelligences, um, people who have strong auditory skills as opposed to others who don't. First grades prefer reading. Why? They prefer listening. Your students hate reading. When you say reading, do you mean reading aloud or reading silently for meaning? Okay, thank you. Silently. We're talking about different things here. Reading aloud is not really what we're trying to get people to do in order to read and understand things. Okay. Um, yes, there are people who subvocalize, who basically read to themselves, and you can see their lips moving. Okay. to listen to native speakers. That reading aloud is, yes, reading aloud is a very specific reading skill, and it's only it's really relevant for only certain types of text. When you have text, whole text, and little articles and things to read, the idea is that they should read it silently. You mean they enjoy reading aloud without understanding? Thank you. This is often what happens. When people read aloud, they don't pay attention to what they're reading. Okay, it's something to bear in mind. Reading aloud has a lot to do with early literacy skills, yeah? When we want younger children to associate the sounds of the language to the written language, to the code, to writing. Reading aloud is not effective from an understanding point of view, unless, of course, you have people who need to hear the text in order to understand it because it helps them. Sometimes people who have certain difficulties find it helpful. But usually what they do is they listen and follow in the text. They don't read aloud. No, they shouldn't read the lesson aloud. If you want to get them to listen to the recording that you have and follow, do it, but just bear in mind that it's not going to necessarily help them get meaning or, yes, reading aloud is a presentation skill, not a comprehension one, absolutely. You cannot correct their reading when they read silently. Again, reading aloud is for younger learners who are learning to read. They know the spoken language and learning to read, okay? This is not the kind of reading that we're talking about. Are you focusing on fluency through reading aloud, or should you be focusing on fluency through speaking activities? You set a task. Okay, we're going to do some practical work. And hopefully we're going to get somewhere through that. Okay. I'm going to leave this and carry on. Okay, tasks, activities. Yes, absolutely. Okay, this is a transcript from a native speaker. Why am I asking you to do this? I'm asking you to do this because you're teachers and this is a training session. When you're teaching intermediate and you're still working on building their fluency skills, give them time, set up the speaking activities, give them time to speak, and don't correct every single mistake. I am not saying that it's not a good idea to let them listen to the recording. Yes, fine, that's understood. But you need to distinguish between reading for understanding and reading to follow as they listen to the recording. Okay, look at this, please. Okay, this is from a native speaker. This picture and that picture, I think I have in an airport or a place like that, and there are 6 people, 7 maybe. One is running out. The one of the rooms with the handbag, another one is drinking coffee, I think probably. And there's a lady passing by, I suppose, or observing, and a little boy. What I suppose is a kind of window, yeah, in the corridor. And oh no, there are 6 people, but 2 of them are part of a picture, I think. Yeah, all tight. Yeah, I'm sure the picture I have comes before the one in the table. In my picture, I think we should already start describing our picture, okay? So we can say it quicker in my picture. I see a fellow riding a bike, and approaching to a corner, where we can see a truck. It seems to me that this fellow is not looking at the truck, which is approaching the corner. Are we still going on about reading aloud, or are we looking at this? This represents the way people speak. Okay. So, do you see complete sentences? Yes, fine. No. It is clear that he's describing a picture and he hasn't had the time to prepare. He's just looking at the picture and talking about it. This is the way people talk, with pauses, yeah, with fillers, with sounds like to give yourself time to think, okay, with repetitions, with gaps, with grammatical mistakes. Thank you very much. This is a transcript, okay? It's real. It was a recording from a native speaker trying to describe a picture. So why am I showing you this? Just to remind you that a lot of what needs to be done is not a waste of time. It's not a waste of time at all. This is natural speech. It's natural, unrehearsed speech. Yes, if you have the context, it's usually understood, even though you say it's not complete. When we speak, we don't necessarily speak in complete sentences. And we don't worry about mistakes here and there. Everybody makes mistakes, including native speakers. So if you want your learners to develop fluency, yes, even in talk shows, they use the same way of talking. Yes, because it is natural. You have to be aware of this and make your students aware of this to encourage them to use whatever language they have in order to speak. Absolutely, yes, we all do it in our language. We all do it in our mother tongues. Okay, so let's try and really distinguish between spoken language and written language here, and make people be aware of some of the features. Okay, the reason people stop and is because if you haven't prepared a speech, a talk, you need time to think as you speak. There is what we call restricted processing time. You haven't got the time. So you need to stop, you need to repeat because you're trying to speak and think at the same time. This is important for listening as well, because the person who listens needs those pauses, needs the repetitions to be able to follow. Let me ask you something. Have you sat in lectures where the speaker has read from a text? Yes, I agree. You need grammar in writing all the time. Okay. Yes. Uh, are they easy to follow when they read a text aloud? Yes, they're easy to follow. Well, in that case, then, okay, hang on. In that case, then, what I'm going to do is I am going to read something aloud. Wish to let me read myself. Yes, good. It's boring. Yes. No, you haven't got the same text. You mean you're sitting in a lecture hall and you're listening to a lecturer. It will be very boring. It will be very confusing as well. Okay, let's try it. Let's try it. I'm going to do exactly that. Just a very, very short one. Okay, I'm going to talk about styles of speaking. An important dimension of conversation is using a style of speaking that is appropriate to the particular circumstances. Different styles of speaking reflect the roles, age, sex, and status of participants in interactions, and also reflect the expression of politeness. Consider the various ways in which it is possible to ask someone the time and the different social meanings that are communicated by these differences. What do you remember from what I told you just now? It's a very short one. It's not an hour's lecture. It was hardly a minute. Nothing. Thank you very much. No, it's not. It's not. Yes, okay. The way someone speaks does make a difference, okay? But what I'm trying to show you is that in written text, because this is what I did, I read out from a written text. No, you again. I repeat. I'm giving you an example of what might happen if you are following a lecture and the lecturer doesn't address you directly as an audience and go back and explain things and so on, but reads out a text. It's very difficult because written text is dense. It has a lot of information. There are no pauses. There are no repetitions. There is no redundancy to help you follow. Yes, exactly. A handout would be a solution. But why then go to a lecture if all you need is just a handout to read? I hope this is coming through. Um, okay. Sources of comprehension. Some of you have seen this before. Some of you mentioned schemata before. Okay. These are the sources of comprehension, have been the sources of comprehension, technically speaking, in applied linguistics for a couple of decades now, more actually. First one, background knowledge, factual, sociocultural, schematic knowledge, procedural knowledge, how language is used in discourse in different types of exchanges, knowledge of situation, physical setting, participants, etc., visual support, nonverbal communication. In other words, yes, okay. But this is for teachers. Okay, it's in teachers' resources. It's not just theory, and this is what we take into consideration when we work through when we try to train people, train learners to understand um, through reading or listening. Okay, a knowledge of situation is very, very important, isn't it? How can you get, for example, one of your students in the first year of intermediate um, to understand a whole discussion about restaurants or about hotels if they have never stayed in a hotel? Yeah. So sometimes it's not the big topics that we like to think of, it's something a lot more practical. If you don't know how this operates, then you don't understand what people are talking about. Knowledge of context is what has been or will be heard or will be said. So in terms of reading, it could be a paragraph that you're looking at, but you have to bear in mind what has come before that paragraph, the previous paragraph, and what follows, as well as other things that you know about the particular subject that is being discussed. And finally, knowledge of the language system, semantic, syntactic, and phonological. Okay? That's systemic knowledge. So you've got at least, I've chosen one of the simpler kind of frames, at least these three areas to consider. This is what understanding depends on. It's not just language, it's not just words. If you don't know how the world operates in certain contexts, the words are not going to help you very much. Um, so it's we need everything, okay? Um, all right, so can we try and go through this together? In spoken discourse, in speaking, when I talk about spoken discourse or spoken text, uh, do try, please, do try to think of listening and speaking, yeah? And written discourse, uh, thinking of both reading and writing. Grammatical accuracy. Which area is it more important in? Yes, written discourse. So grammatical accuracy, as some of you mentioned before, is very important for written discourse. Not so important for spoken discourse. So unless the speaking that you're doing in class is specifically to practice a particular kind of language that you have presented, to practice grammar, do be more tolerant of mistakes, as we have already discussed, so that you do encourage the students to learn to use whatever they know in order to communicate, in order to convey certain meanings, okay? Planned content, usually. Written specifically, but it could be both. Yes, you could have planned content in spoken discourse. Have I got planned content? Have I planned the content of what we're talking about? Right, I have. I'm not talking off the top of my head, yeah? Okay, but specifically in written discourse. When you're chatting with somebody, when you're speaking to someone, um, formally or informally, because you have met and you are exchanging sort of news and talking and so on, is that planned content? No, it's not planned. That's simultaneous speech. And that is when we haven't got time to plan. All right. Uh, Very often, that is the most difficult thing for a lot of people to do. Um, Repetition in spoken discourse, written discourse, or both? Spoken discourse mostly. Do we get repetition in written discourse of ideas, words? Yes, we do, yeah, for cohesion purposes. But it mostly in spoken discourse. False starts and restarts. You start saying something and then you go back and reword. Check information. Spoken, yes. Punctuation. Punctuation. Written. Phonology. Pronunciation. Features like stress, intonation. Is it written or spoken? Spoken. Thank you. Uh, Phonology. No, it's not. Both how. You're thinking of reading aloud again. Okay. Word chunks. When do we pay attention to word chunks? Okay. Both or one? Written, spoken. Okay, let's agree on both. Register. When is register important? Register has to do again with context, who's speaking to whom, and so on and so forth. Spoken and written, yeah. Okay. Structure, organization. Written, referencing, okay, and so on and so forth. Okay. All right. Complete sentences. Yes. Complete sentences, where are they more important in writing? Yes. Utterances. When can we have utterances? Utterances are not grammatical sentences. They're incomplete in spoken, yeah? Conjunctions, words, phrases that connect ideas. Where do we have them mostly? In written language, okay? Um, Redundancy, where we say things more than once, we say them differently, we clarify, we do all kinds of things like that. Spoken mostly, okay. Non-verbal communication. Communication where we don't use language, but we might use gestures or an expression, the expression of our face, or point to something. Spoken. Good. Okay. What are the implications then for teaching? People are getting bored. You're getting ready to leave. Both. Okay. Um, all right. Now we're getting into reading aloud. Um, Students need to read aloud so we can check pronunciation. What are the reasons? But can't you check pronunciation? Can't you do pronunciation work through listening and repeating? Yes, you can correct them. You can correct mistakes. Uh, but is it so important to always read aloud? It is important. Again, it's not a bad idea to get them to listen to the recording of the text, if you like. But yes, it's not included in all in the aims of the lesson of reading. Not important. Um, yeah. Okay. So we've dealt with that. So bottom-up processing is when we start from with the language and go up to meaning, top down from meaning to language. Yes? Do you remember? But it's not always easy to distinguish, is it? Same goes for bottom-up processing and top-down processing, okay? From language to meaning, from meaning to language. Why am I saying this? Because like when you said earlier that they don't understand because they don't know the words, because they can't understand all the words, you are talking about bottom up processing. So, what you're saying is, in order to be able to understand, you need to know all the words and the structures that are used. But if we look at the way we've been working through the topics and through activating knowledge, then we are using mostly top-down processing, okay? So to begin with, this is what we want to do, yeah? Activate learner knowledge sources, okay? So focus on the learner, access knowledge sources through images, questions, statements, other tasks before they read or listen. Listening is the most difficult task for students, you say. Yes, it is very difficult. Okay, I'm afraid some people think it's a 1 hour session. It's not a 1 hour session. As Sirish mentioned earlier, it's a 2 hour session, okay? We stop at 12 o'clock and you haven't got an afternoon session. There is no afternoon session like there used to be. Top down, bottom up. Yes, fine, okay? Um, allow thinking time, processing time. Okay. 3-stage approach. Yeah, this is fairly standard. Now you're all familiar with this. What you do before the reading, and what's the aim of what you do before the reading. Yes, absolutely. I'm all for Stephen Crashton. Okay. Right, I'll leave this for later then. But remember, we're talking about 3-stage approach. Okay. You can go back to that if you want. Okay. Let's do a bit of a lesson. Those of you who are familiar with the material, please don't give it away. Yes, you can have questions. Okay. So have a look at this. Who are these people? Who do you think they are? Friends. They're on a plane. Passengers on a plane. How do you know they're passengers on a plane? What helps you? What helped you decide there were passengers on a plane? A bus. Why do you think it's a bus? The seats, okay. Chairs, yes. All right. Okay. Do they know each other? Travelers, yes. Do they know each other? Brothers, you think they're related? Okay. So these are the questions that I used with you. Yeah. Okay. So what? Why are they on a plane? Ah, there are no curtains in planes. That's very observant. So you think it's a bus? Maybe. No, you think they're not related. Why don't you think they're related? So you use the mobile, so they're on a bus. Can't you sometimes use your mobile on a plane? Okay. Train. Okay. Twins. All right. It's possible. Where are they going, do you think? Are they leaving the country? Are they traveling within the country? Is it domestic travel? Okay. All right. We'll find out more about them. Business travel, tourism. Okay, so they're going to another city, maybe another country even. Hmm? Okay. Do you think they're leaving on business, a school journey, a school trip? Is there a chance they might be leaving the country to go to university in another country? It's possible. Okay. So is it easy to move, to go somewhere else, to live there, to live in a new place? Work. Ah, they're doctors. Mm-hmm. Maybe not going to. Okay, not during the pandemic. No, this is before the pandemic. Okay, all right. Push that a little bit aside. Push that picture to the side now. And let's have a look at this. There is an expression, something out of something. Could you think of anything? Can you complete this? A fish out of the sea. Yeah, another possibility. A fish out of. What is the important element for fish? Think box, okay. The weather out of control. A car out of the road. Okay. A chip off the old block. Yeah, you've changed it though. Get out of my way. Yes, but a something out of nothing. Yeah, that's a good one. A moment out of time. Good. Okay, but as an expression, let's go back to the fish. A fish out of what? You said sea. What is the sea made of? What is in the sea? Water. Okay, so a soul out of the. Okay, think out of the. Okay, so a fish out of water. Okay, all of the rest are great ideas. Okay, can we now have a look at this? A fish out of water. What do you think it means? When you say that it's somebody, he wasn't happy there. He felt like a fish out of water. Yeah. Yes, the fish live in water. Yes, they can't live out of water. All right. So if you say that a person is that he's like a fish out of water, he's not in the right place. Okay. So how is he feeling? He feels that he doesn't belong, a stranger. He's lonely, neglected, unhappy. Okay. All right. Homesick. Okay. So someone out of his country, yes. Stranger, useless, out of his element, yes. Out of what he knows. No, okay. So out of his comfort zone, we might say. But a fish out of water, do you think this is a happy or unhappy person? Okay, can't live outside, depressed, unhappy. Okay, fine. Now, have a look. How would you explain culture shock? Out of sight. Maybe it's freedom. Okay. How would you explain culture shock? What is culture shock? Strong challenge. Yes, change of nature. A new culture, a different culture, a new place, new language. What else? Not like other ordinary people. A difference between what he knows, his usual culture, different from his own culture. Okay, yes, it is related to sense of identity and so on. Can't adapt to the new culture. Different thoughts, okay? Something against your thinking, all right? So if you find yourself in a completely different setting and a completely different culture, how would you feel? You would feel like a fish out of water. Thank you. Yes, the water stands for culture there. All right. Or not. There are people who don't feel like fish out of water in new cultures. They manage to adapt very quickly. All right. So you said a number of things. Now, read the first part of the article. It's here. And compare with your ideas about culture shock. Okay? Your ideas were all very good, so it's not right or wrong. But read this. This is the first part of the article. And compare with your ideas.
Denai, are you there?
Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah? Can you hear me?
Now I can.
I'm waiting for people to read.
Oh. I'm sorry, this session is for 2 hours because we don't have an afternoon session. And I feel bad when Dana is investing so much time and energy in trying to teach you for this training, and you want to know when this training is going to end. I don't know what to say, to be honest.
Okay. Okay. So, do you think you were close? Is it easy to adjust to a new culture? Is there a problem with what we're doing? Culture shock. Okay. Sometimes. Ask questions. Okay. It takes time to adjust. Yes. So, when was culture shock as a term used? That's right, 54. Okay. And Obert identified 5 stages of culture shock. Yeah. When people travel to other countries. Um, can you guess which the 5 stages are? Don't say anything if you've already read the text. Okay, let's have a look. These are the phases. Yeah? Can you look at them? The adjustment phase, emptiness or rejection phase, yes, denial, the conformist phase, assimilation phase or complete adjustment, reverse culture shock. You want to shock. Okay, what do you think they're about? What do you think the first stage is about? Very briefly, the adjustment phase. What kind of information would you expect to find there? Food? Adapting, trying to find similarities, trying to fit in. Okay, good, good, good. Emptiness or rejection stage? Homesickness, missing your home, your people. The conformist phase? Any ideas? Conformist phase? No ideas? Okay. Getting settled, communication with the family. Assimilation phase, complete adjustment, yes. Assimilation phase or complete adjustment. Adapting, okay, when you accept the new culture, yes, good, 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 good. Okay, reverse culture shock. What do you suppose that is? Acceptance. Familiar, totally adapt. We're still talking about 4 then, yes. When you go back home, is that 5? Yes, acculturation, yes. When you go back to your country, all right. Okay, let's carry on then. What I'm going to ask you to do is to read each one of these sections. Okay, they're on 2 slides. So you'll have to do one, tell me, then the other, and then I'll move it around if you want to check. So can you please read the sections? There are 5 sections, 3 on this slide and 2 on this slide, and try and match them to the phases. We're doing a reading lesson, part of a reading lesson at least. Don't give any answers yet. Make a note of your answers. Don't give any answers yet. Make a note of your answers. Okay, you've all kind of answered. You've answered 5 for what? For which one? 5 is the first one. So it's reverse culture shock. That's this one, yeah? What about the next one? You think this is 3, the conformist phase? You think it's 1, the adjustment phase? Okay. 5, 1, 3. You said 2, 4. Don't look in the book. Paragraph 2 is 1. Yeah, that's what you think. Okay. 5 and then 1. And then? What about this one? The newcomer has to, I'm not telling you which book, has to deal with the usual problems of accommodation, transportation, and so on. You think it's 3, the conformist stage? 3, 2. Okay. Oops. All right. This is the next one. This period can last 6 months or longer. Which period is that? You think 3, 4. One. Okay. If we could speak directly, online or otherwise, but we can't, I'm afraid, because there's 700 something of you, and it's not likely. I would normally ask students to say why they thought that was, why, to justify their answers. The last one you think is 4. Okay. Right. This is it. Oops. I hope this doesn't go okay. I don't know if you can you see this? Can you read it? Or is that too small? Let me use the PDF. No. Okay. Is this better? Can you read it? Good? Okay. You read and check what you think. Check your answers. You can't read it.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So how did you do with your matching? Hello, are you all there?
I'm here, Danai. We hear
I'm glad to hear that, Madani. I
you.
don't know about...
You thought I was away, right? But I've been watching you all the time.
Okay, 2 out of 5.
Of
Yes.
course, with as always, with great pleasure. Didn't lose a minute of what you're saying all about.
Thank you so much. Are you going to be with us tomorrow?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Hope so. Hope
Can
so.
we do a little something tomorrow?
Yes, yes. I'm waiting for that best part of the whole thing.
Okay.
I
Then
remember, but we're not going to tell people what it is today, right?
No, no, no. No, we're not.
All right. Okay. Right. So listening to you.
Okay. Oh, something real. Okay, your sister says she's shocked. She was shocked at first, but now she doesn't want to come back. Okay, fine. All right, so you all did quite well, right? Okay. The next thing is, what do you think? Why do you think these separate little sections go with these titles, with these subtitles? Okay. Okay. In other words, what I'm trying to get to here is, yes, the main idea of each section. Okay. So you justify the heading of each section. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to ask you to do this fully, but may I ask you to do it for 2, for example? Why is this called emptiness or rejection phase? All right, can you find the main idea in the section? So there is something in the section that connects it to the main to the main idea, connects it to the heading. Away from family and friends. It doesn't say anything like that here. Okay. Complain about, reject the new country. Yes, you're right in what you're saying. The newcomer has to deal with the usual problems of this, that, and the other, and very often not being able to communicate fluently in the local language. So it's negative. The local people may not understand why the newcomer is making such a big deal over what they see as a small problem. At this point, the newcomer starts to complain about and maybe even reject the new country. Yes, keywords is what I'm trying to get to. Deal with problems, okay? No favorite foods. Not able to communicate. Local people do not understand. Okay? So starts complain about, reject the new country, all right? So what I would do is ask people to highlight the bits that made them, that makes it this title, this heading, appropriate for this section, okay? This is also training for note-taking as well, yeah? In the long run. So this is why I'm decided to do it. Okay, so. I might have to go back to that in a minute. But for now, okay, what you have in your book is words and definitions and questions about the reading, discussion, and then finally a project. Okay. Now, one of the questions here is, what do you think fish out of water means? We moved it around. We began with it, yeah, just to raise expectations, to make you think about things, elicit ideas. Okay. The other one is, what do you understand by the term culture shock? Well, culture shock has to do with this, and it is connected with fish out of water. So this is why we pushed it there. When did the expression first appear? Okay, this is for later when you read. In your own words, classify the five different stages of culture shock. Okay, I'm not sure what one is supposed to do here. No sound. Can you hear me? Okay. So what we
Yes.
did was jumble the sections and match each section to the appropriate heading, subheading. Okay. I'm just showing you what you can do if you have clear aims in your mind, and if you look at materials and how you're going to use them, if you focus on process, how you want your students to think, how you want to train them to think so that they can become independent eventually, become more confident with reading, okay? Look at what you have and try and move it around in such a way so that in the first stage, which is before reading, as you know. In the first stage, you can raise expectations, get them to anticipate, okay, anticipate things. Their level cannot afford that. Well, okay, fine, try. Don't use it with this one. Use it with another text. Okay. What you can do with your students then is maybe use this exactly as it is, use these questions only, or add a few more questions yourself. Okay. But if you think this text is unsuitable, oh, sorry, this is not in, sorry, I made a mistake. This is not in 4, it's in 6, yeah? So, yeah, it is quite demanding, but you can see that regardless of what language difficulties they might have in some places, they can still get the meaning. This is what we want. This text, and yeah, but if you want to analyze the text and go through every single word, then yes, it's not going to work. What we are operating on is the premise that we can train learners to understand texts that are more advanced than what they can produce. And this is true of all of us. How you can deal with reading lessons is, and listening lessons is, and what I wanted to do before, oops, 3 stages, yeah? There's a 3-stage approach. Before reading, the purpose of this is to activate background knowledge, language associated with the topic or the situation, active schema or script related with certain events, activities, behaviors, norms, etc. In other words, if it's about, for example, travel, if they know about travel, it activates it. If you find that there is something, a schema that your students are not familiar with, then it would be a good idea for you to give them that information. For example, that when you travel, you have to go through security checks, that you use your passport, and so on and so forth. Why must you encourage your students to prepare for reading lessons before the class? Reading is important. For more information, you mean ask them to do the before reading stage? Yeah, but then you should give them very specific questions. I'm not sure what you mean by preparation here. Do you mean that they have to read the text? All right, can we talk about flipped class again? Was this reading lesson boring for you? The text is not anything terribly exciting, but was this reading lesson that we did together boring for you? Okay, a flipped classroom again, may I explain? When we talk about flipping in terms of reading, because I think there has been huge misunderstanding in our field too, in language teaching. I'll repeat, flipped classroom, okay, is originally related to flipping roles, okay? In other words, roles between students and teachers, all right? It hasn't, it doesn't mean that you ask the students to study something beforehand to save time. Yes, if you need to draw their interest to the topic before reading, that's a good idea. So if you want to say, for example, if you want to say to them, okay, what I want you to do for tomorrow is try and look up the meaning of the word of the expression, a fish out of water, and also try and put together some ideas about a culture shock. And if that's the preparation, or you give them some specific questions, not from the text, but about things that they're going to be talking about or reading about, fine. But if you're going to ask them to go home, read the text at home, look up all the words, then the lesson in class is not going to be a reading lesson. Developing reading skills doesn't mean memorizing texts or memorizing all the words from a text. It means training students to be able to understand texts as much as possible, even if the texts are beyond their level of production. And this is doable. We know that this can be done. Maybe they will not understand what you think is 100%. It's not necessary. This is why we have very specific tasks. We have very specific questions and so on. Now, in the while reading, in your book, it says after reading. Okay, so I'm just making that connection. If you want to give the questions to the students when they read, so I'm referring specifically, sorry. To these questions. Yeah. That if you help them, sorry. Yes, well, that's what we did through the headings. We dealt with the main idea of every paragraph. But you're talking about scanning and skimming. When you skim, for example, you're going to notice the headings first. Being able to form some kind of general idea about what each text is about through the headings is useful. Okay. Yes, flipped classroom is fine if you are careful with what you give them. If flipped classroom means that instead of actually doing this in class and helping them develop reading skills, you ask them to go and study the whole thing at home and translate and look up every word, then that's not flipping. The example that I gave you yesterday, and I'm going to repeat it, is that's something that can be done, especially in higher education, when the attention is on content, on the information, on the what is If somebody, for example, is studying, I don't know, statistics, or if somebody is studying um, help, Madani, help, um, any other field, all right, of study, medicine or whatever, um, and they go and study a particular area, they read about it before the lecture, or computer science. Yes, thank you. They look up the area, they do some pre-reading before a lecture or a workshop and so on. That's fine. That's very good. That's relevant. No, what I'm saying is a flipped classroom when it comes to reading should be used wisely to do things that are appropriate for our learners. In higher education, we're not looking at the language, we're looking at the content. So if somebody is studying computer science, they're not bothered about the language. They're not studying the language. They're not trying to develop reading skills. They have developed the basic, more than the basic reading skills. I'm not saying they couldn't get better. Of course they could get better. But they're not developing the language. They're not developing reading skills through the language, or developing the language through the skills. This is not why they're doing it. Yes, it requires wise planning. Where is this coming from? Where is this kind of across the board flipped classroom coming from? Yes, language is a means in when somebody is studying medicine or studying whatever. It's a means in all cases, if you think about it, communication or whatever. But what we're doing in developing reading skills is what we try to develop reading skills. We're not doing reading in order for them to learn every single word that is in the text. It's a different purpose. This is why here you have 4 questions only, so that they can focus on those questions. And here, match the words with the definitions, which we didn't talk about. After we do all the matching and so on, what I would ask students to do is have a look at this first, and then read through and match. Yes, you develop understanding, but you also develop techniques. You show them how to do things. If they match by chance, yeah, just and then check, they haven't really done anything. They haven't learned anything. If they look at this, yeah, they read through these, and then they look through the text and see, okay, and find the word here, and then look back and match, they develop something that is going to be useful from throughout. It's not just for this lesson. They're developing skills and strategies, and being aware of how to do things. Yes, you do need to teach them reading strategies, different, but not by telling them, by getting them to do things. So one of the principles is to always get them to justify. The other thing is, if you want to use these questions, you get them to look at the questions first and then read. Because if you don't do that, they will be looking and analyzing every single word. They should read to develop their vocabulary. Yes, this is one part of the reasons, but not every single word in the text. We are not, this is not grammar translation. What we're doing these days is focusing on different areas. Okay, so if you look at what you have here in your course book, sorry. Okay, you have the listen and discuss. Okay, how would you do this, by the way? Could you do it the way we did what we did yesterday? Do you remember? When we started off with the parrot and so on and asked them what they thought and all that. So you could actually use the visuals and go through it that way. But this is also in order to introduce language, yeah? So this is language oriented, but it's also meaning. So we use it, okay, through listening and through reading to begin with for meaning. And then we focus on the examples of language it has, which help us teach the language that we're focusing on in this unit. Sorry. I'm trying to oh, this is not working again. I hope I'm not getting.
I can see your screen with the cultural shock.
Sorry?
I can see your screen.
I know, I'm just trying to get some other pages, and the other screen keeps on going on and off, and I hope it's not under attack again, because that would be bad news. But okay, and we're running. I'm running out of time today. Okay, so this is language oriented. Okay, I'm sorry, I haven't got the grammar page here. In other words, yeah, I did one. Okay, like in here, for example, yeah, you start off with this, and this is language oriented, so you can move on. Uh-oh. So you can move on to this. So the grammar here is present perfect with already, yet, just. But what you're getting is this helps you present that in context, and then you go onto the form and isolate it and do your practice and all that. This one is language in context. So there is a speaking there. This one is listening. So it's listening and understanding. It's not to learn more words and to learn more language. This is to make them aware of pronunciation issues more than anything else. This is for them to personalize, yeah, to relate to their own life, their own experiences, talk about things, to discuss. And if you're online, this is exactly what I said. Yes, teachers make things boring or interesting. We can. And what's important is not what we like, it's what the students like, what will get the students motivated. Okay, So you can get them to look at these questions and discuss. So this is not a test. They're supposed to do this in groups, collaborative learning. Okay. If you're online and you don't want to put them into breakout rooms, and I don't know why you're, I mean, I understand that it's not easy, but it's really worth doing. You just get them to talk to each other and make notes, and you can listen in to make sure they're doing it in English. Okay. In conversation, you also have some focus on language, particularly in terms of functions. Yes, I know we only have 1 minute left, so I'm trying to round it up. Okay. Now, reading is for reading skills specifically, it's still within the same topic of the unit, which is complaints. Okay. Writing is specifically writing, accumulating everything they've done today to this point, and there is some focus on language. And this page includes some more items that are in your curriculum just to make sure that they're there. So if you think they don't remember or they don't know them or whatever, so you can help them do that. So there are sections that focus specifically on language, that focus on accuracy, and there are sections that focus on skills development. So this is the whole thing. We don't want them to learn the book. We want them to learn the language. So we're using the book. The book is supposed to help you do that. But if you want them to learn every single thing that is on every page, then that's going to be impossible. When should you play the recording material during a reading lesson? Okay, Huda, there are different options here. I would personally, I wouldn't play it until later, after, in other words, in the lesson that we did, after we do the matching and maybe before we do they work through the vocabulary, get them to listen to it and follow in their books, just for that. Other people use it to begin with. In other words, before they do anything, after the discussion on what culture shock is and so on, and um, when you go into the first paragraph, you play it and they listen to the first paragraph, not the rest of it. So it depends on exactly what you want to do, but basically it's there to help deal with the problem of also reading and chunking, separating things, the pronunciation that you mentioned, and so on. It's not there to make students read aloud. That's something that we do in elementary. And even there, not necessarily the last year of elementary. Okay, yes, communicate about the topic. All right. I can see that people are in a hurry to leave, so let's stop here. We'll be working on some things that we didn't have the time to work on today, tomorrow, and I'm going to try and clarify this difference between reading for understanding and developing skills and strategies that are permanent, that are for the future and beyond. So thank you for your patience and thank you for all the communication and thank you for being absolutely wonderful.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I just want to echo what Danai has mentioned. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for being patient with us. And I'm just going to drop the link in the chat box for today's and tomorrow's session, yesterday's session, sorry, because a lot of you are saying you missed the session yesterday and you would like to have the links for the handout. So here they are. You will get it for both yesterday and today. Thank you for joining us. And I guess we will pick up Q&A tomorrow then, Danai, right?
I suppose so, if people are in a hurry to leave.
Yes, I agree with you. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank
See you
you.
tomorrow. There is no afternoon session. We just have one session tomorrow. Same time.
Thank you.